They called themselves chosen by God. Men who commanded armies, crushed revolts, built empires. Yet the enemies that finally conquered them did not come with swords. They came with breath, with touch, with whispers in the dark. Syphilis, the invisible executioner of Europe's royal blood. For centuries it moved through palaces unseen, sliding from bed to bed beneath silk sheets and powdered wigs. A disease born of pleasure that left only pain. It began with lust and ended in madness. No crown was heavy enough to protect its wearer. Not in London, not in Paris, not in Berlin or Copenhagen. This is the story of how kings became corpses while still alive, how dynasties collapsed not from battle, but from within. The hidden plague. When syphilis arrived in Europe in the late 15th century, no one knew its name. Some blamed sailors from the New World. Others called it the French disease or the Neapolitan plague. By the 17th century, it had no borders. It belonged to everyone. Its cruelty lay in deception. A small sore appeared, painless. Then it vanished. Weeks later, rash, fever, ulcers. Then silence again. Victims believed themselves cured, but within their blood, the infection slept, months, years, decades, waiting to reawaken. When it did, it struck nerves, eyes, and mind. Neurosyphilis, the slow unmaking of thought itself. Doctors had no true cure. They prescribed mercury, believing that what made the body sweat might cleanse the soul. Patients drooled, shook, lost their teeth, and still died. In royal courts, it was worse than death. Disease meant weakness. Weakness meant instability. So they hid it behind powder, perfume, and lies. Charles II of England, the Merry Monarch and the Slow Rot, England, 1660. After years of civil war and Puritan rule, the exiled prince returned home. Charles II rode through London to the thunder of cheers. He promised laughter after decades of gloom. He delivered. Theaters reopened, wine flowed, and wit replaced sermons. He was called the Merry Monarch. But joy was not his only companion. In his youth, years of exile in France and the Netherlands, he chased pleasures across Europe. Actresses, noblewomen, courtesans. Somewhere among them, the infection began its quiet work. At first, he ignored the signs: a sore, a fever, a healer's warning. He laughed, poured another drink. Syphilis waits. By his 40s, headaches plagued him. Joints ached. He forgot names, faces. Council meetings shortened. Ministers filled the gaps. Whispers spread. The king grows slow. Mercury ointments burned his skin. Bleedings drained his strength. He aged decades in years. His marriage to Catherine of Braganza brought no heir. Mistresses bore a dozen illegitimate children. None could inherit. Catherine endured humiliation and fear. Each touch might mean infection. By 1685, his body gave out. His face grayed, his mind clouded. Physicians tried last rites disguised as medicine. When he died, England mourned a legend but buried a ruin. His laughter, his charm, his dynasty, all undone by a disease he never dared to name. Behind the restored monarchy's golden facade lay rot. Frederick William II of Prussia. The weak kingdom across the continent, Prussia stood for discipline. The army was a machine, the king, its engineer. Frederick the Great had built that order. His nephew, Frederick William II, inherited it in 1786. The new king was everything his uncle was not: charming, artistic, impulsive. He filled the court with musicians and mistresses. Where Frederick the Great counted bullets, Frederick William counted lovers. Syphilis found him early. A rash dismissed as stress. A fever cured with wine. Then the long descent. By his 30s, bouts of dizziness and pain began. By his 40s, the disease had entered his brain. Mood swings turned to delusion. He trusted no one, then anyone. Courtiers learned to flatter his moods. Ministers forged his signature. Prussia, the model of order, began to crumble. Diplomats wrote of the sickly king in Berlin. Generals acted without command. The state became a puppet show performed before a dying monarch. He grew bloated, paranoid, reclusive. Mercury treatments left him trembling and half-blind. He wandered the palace at night, muttering that ghosts were plotting against him. In 1797, he died at 53. His once mighty army decayed, his treasury strained, his reputation in ruins. A kingdom that had marched in step now stumbled, undone by one man's indulgence and one microbe's patience. Louis XV of France, the beloved who became the despised France, 1715. A boy of 5 inherits the world's most glorious throne. Louis XV, great-grandson of the Sun King. He grew into elegance, intelligent, handsome, adored. The people named him Le Bien-Aimé, the beloved. But Versailles was a theater of temptation. Perfume could mask disease, and flattery could excuse anything. In his youth, Louis moved from one affair to another. Behind the painted fans of courtiers, syphilis thrived. Early symptoms, fatigue, faint fevers, dismissed as the burdens of rule. By middle age, lesions and tremors appeared. Doctors whispered of a secret ailment. His queen, Marie Leschinska, lived apart in humiliation. His mistress, Madame de Pompadour, managed both court and king. Meanwhile, the disease advanced, eroding judgment and patience. France needed a leader. It got a ghost. As wars failed and debts mounted, the people turned their love to mockery. Pamphlets portrayed the king as diseased, decadent, enslaved to vice. His illness became metaphor, the monarchy itself rotting from within. By 1774, he was dying, his face hollow, his mind clouded. Priests performed last rites in secrecy, lest the mob jeer. He died at 64. Crowds cheered as the coffin passed. A man once worshipped was now despised. His death signaled more than the end of a reign. It was the first tremor of a revolution. The same infection that decayed his flesh had already infected the idea of monarchy itself. If the truth beneath history's perfume fascinates you, pause now. Subscribe to the channel. Every week we peel back another layer of gold to expose the bone beneath. Christian VII of Denmark, the crown of madness. Copenhagen, 1766. 17-year-old Christian VII ascends the throne. He is pale, nervous, brilliant, and broken. Beaten by tutors, mocked by courtiers, he learned fear before power. By adolescence, his mind cracked under the weight of cruelty. Doctors called it melancholy. Today we would call it psychosis. Some whispered another cause, the same syphilitic curse that haunted Europe's elite. At first, his behavior amused the court. He laughed at funerals, insulted diplomats, danced alone for hours. Then, the laughter stopped. His wife, Caroline Matilda of Britain, faced humiliation and isolation. Into this chaos came Johann Struensee, a German physician, rational, calm. He soothed the king's rages, gained his trust, and soon ruled through him. He also loved the queen. For a few years, Denmark thrived. Struensee abolished torture, reformed the law, and freed the press. Enlightenment had arrived, through deceit. But reform breeds enemies. In 1772, the nobles struck. A coup in the night. Struensee was seized, tortured, executed, his body quartered. The queen exiled, dead by 23. Christian lived on, a king in name only. He washed his hands until they bled, repeated phrases endlessly, stared into mirrors for hours. Courtiers locked him away, issuing decrees in his name. For 30 years, Denmark had a monarch who could not rule, and a court too ashamed to say it aloud. He died in 1808, aged 59, long forgotten even by his own ministers. His madness, whether born of trauma or infection, exposed the monarchy's secret truth. That divine rule meant nothing when the divine mind failed. The web of secrecy. Across Europe, royal physicians kept silent. To reveal a sovereign's sickness was treason, so they lied. Official records listed fever, melancholy, fatigue. Behind closed doors, they bled, burned, and poisoned their masters with mercury. Palace corridors smelled of ointment and decay. Portraits softened wrinkles. Poets praised vigor. And the machine of monarchy limped on, pretending its engines still worked. Every misjudged treaty, every delayed decree, every scandal, symptoms of an infection no one dared name. Syphilis was not merely biological, it was political. It hollowed authority as surely as it hollowed bone. The disease of empires. Charles II's fall left England unstable until William and Mary seized the crown. Frederick William's weakness let corruption spread through Prussia's bureaucracy. Louis XV's decline prepared the way for the guillotine. Christian VII's madness froze Denmark in stagnation. 4 kings, 4 nations, all touched by one unseen hand. It was not only the infection of flesh, it was an infection of secrecy, indulgence, denial. In each case, the disease followed privilege. The rich believed themselves protected. They hid behind curtains while the poor died openly. But nature recognizes no hierarchy. When syphilis entered royal blood, it proved what no philosopher could, that the divine right of kings ends where biology begins. The flesh and the throne. Look at their portraits, powdered faces, jeweled hands. Now imagine the truth beneath. Charles II's trembling joints, stiff with mercury. Frederick William's pupils dilated in panic. Louis XV's sores beneath the lace collar. Christian VII's bitten nails, his eyes staring at nothing. These were not symbols of immortality. They were reminders that power depends on a single, fragile organ, the brain. And when that fails, kingdoms fall. Each signature that changed history may have been written by a shaking hand. Each royal decree may have been the work of a mind half destroyed by infection. And the people who suffered under them, soldiers, peasants, lovers, all paid for one disease that began in silence. The unseen legacy. By the 19th century, science began to understand what religion had misread. Syphilis was not divine punishment, it was a bacterium. But by then, the damage was done. Dynasties had fallen. Revolutions had reshaped the continent. The hidden plague had already rewritten history. It taught rulers fear. It taught physicians secrecy. It taught empires humility. Too late to save them. Even today, the bones of monarchs carry its scars. Tiny lesions in skulls resting in royal tombs, silent evidence of the disease that shaped a continent. The secret doctors of the crown. For every dying king, there was a physician sworn to silence. Royal doctors were not healers. They were gatekeepers. Their task was to preserve the illusion of immortality. They tested mercury, arsenic, and powdered coral. They wrapped ulcers in silk and painted over scars with white lead. When madness appeared, they renamed it melancholy or exhaustion. In Whitehall, Dr. George Bate signed false reports as Charles II's mind faded. In Berlin, court physicians diluted mercury until it poisoned the air itself. At Versailles, the royal infirmary reeked of ointment and incense, masking rot with ritual. No one dared record syphilis. To write the word was to declare that the king was mortal. Instead, archives speak in euphemisms: weakness of spirit, internal heat, nervous affection. The lie was official policy, because if a monarch could be diseased, divine order itself could be questioned. Thus the physicians became accomplices, protecting the crown by destroying the body beneath it. The rot that outlived them. Long after the monarchs died, their legacy of infection remained. Syphilis traveled down the veins of bloodlines, birthing heirs marked from conception. In royal nurseries, babies were stillborn, blind, or feverish. Courtiers called it the wasting sickness. Modern science calls it congenital syphilis. The disease that began in royal bedrooms now shaped succession itself. Whole dynasties faltered. Heirs vanished before reaching adulthood. By the 19th century, as microscopes replaced superstition, Europe finally named its invisible tyrant. Yet the old secrecy lingered. Even then, royal doctors erased diagnoses from archives, protecting reputations centuries dead. And so the rot endured, not only in bodies, but in memory. Because history, like flesh, prefers not to show its scars. The silent destroyer. Syphilis did what no rebellion could. It made gods human. It reminded the powerful that power ends at the skin. Charles II, Frederick William II, Louis XV, Christian VII. 4 crowns, 1 curse. Each undone not by war, but by their own desires. No sword, no assassin, only a slow, patient whisper in the blood. And so the lesson endures. The higher the crown, the deeper the rot when it falls. The past was never clean. It only looked radiant until the light changed. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of glory, decay, and the quiet diseases that rewrote history. Because kings may command armies, but they can never command their own flesh.